Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a fantastic guest. This young man is fairly new to our town, but he's made a big impact in a quick time. He is a new dad, a fairly new dad. His baby boy just turned 1 year, 2 weeks ago. He's got a great business right there on the main drag on Pine Street. And he's very active in our community as a volunteer, as a public servant through the community in many ways, especially through the Kiwanis Club. He's just a great guy, a family man, a business leader. I can't say enough good things about our guest, Sham Singh. So, Sham, with no further ado, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Parker. Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. I know when you've got a 1-year-old that, getting home from work on time can be a big deal. And I'm sure your wife will need some help soon. So I promise not to keep you too long. But with the time we have today, I'd love for you to basically share your story about yourself, your family, your business, so the people of Ponchatoula can get to know you a little bit. So why don't we just start out with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, that's great, man. So I'm Sham Singh. I'm the agency owner at Southern Oaks Insurance and on Pine Street, like Parker mentioned. Originally from a small town in Waynesboro, Mississippi. It's a very small town in the Bible Belt buckle of the South, I like to call it. But, great town. It reminds me a lot like Ponchatoula, honestly. But, however, it doesn't have Hammond or Baton Rouge or New Orleans metropolitan area. It is just Ponchatoula sitting on an island.
Yeah.
It's kind
So
of
how far to the nearest, like what would be the biggest kind of city near there?
Sure.
And how long would it take you to get there?
Well, something that became very popular, I guess, from HGTV was a town called Laurel, Mississippi. That's about 30 minutes away.
Okay.
And then it's about another hour, 30 minutes to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So it's about an hour, hour from Hattiesburg. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, I've been to small towns all over the state and heck, the whole South really. And that's the thing. There's a big difference between being a small town like we are, big city adjacent, where,
Sure.
you could get in your car and go to Baton Rouge or New Orleans for lunch today and make it back to work, much less, Hammond, versus being really isolated, being a little town outside of Ruston in North Louisiana or, in Ouachita Parish or places like that.
Very simple.
Well, what was it like growing up in a community like that? What'd y'all do for fun? What was your home life like? Tell us about that.
Yeah, growing up in a small town, of course, very community involved. Everybody knows everybody. You go to Friday night lights, high school football is a big thing. You grow up playing t-ball, soccer, similar to a lot like, growing up here and church on Sunday, Sunday supper on the stove when you get home. And, just real big community involvement, small town like that. And it really hits home,
Great living, man. That's you're speaking to the choir here, man. Singing to the choir with this kind of stuff I like. What you mentioned sports. What sports did you play as a kid? What positions? Who are your favorite teams? What were you into?
Well, I've always played soccer growing up. That was something that my dad introduced me to playing as a kid, and I played a little t-ball. I really took soccer was probably the main sport that I played, but I'm a big sports fan. Not the best athlete in the world, but I do enjoy it. Yeah.
I can relate to that. We mentioned you being in the Kiwanis, and later in the show, I'll ask you about that, what all you guys do for the community and why you like doing it. But it reminds me that my coach when I was a child, from coach's pitch, which was my first year of baseball, through the 8th grade at St. Joseph, where he also coached, was Mutt Burner, one of the finest men in Ponchatoula, just a great guy. But when I came back years later to speak to the Kiwanis Club for the first time as an adult, as a young attorney representing the Attorney General at the time, he introduced me and he said something to the effect of how my athletic career peaked in about the 6th grade. So I can relate. But as a soccer guy, and clearly you have that connection with your dad through soccer, you a Ted Lasso fan? You watching any Ted Lasso these days?
I've heard a lot about Ted Lasso. I haven't watched Ted Lasso. It's funny because I love playing soccer, but I hated to run. So,
I can relate to that. Yeah.
at an early age, I figured out the goalie, that's where I wanted to be. So I stayed in the goal so I didn't have to run around as much.
That's great. You must have had good hands. Well,
Yeah.
look, of course, I should have known the answer to that. You have a 1-year-old. Of course, you haven't had time to watch Ted Lasso in the last year. Well, that's cool. Well, you mentioned t-ball, baseball. You know, who are you into there? Did you follow any bigger teams? What positions did you play? You know, tell us about your baseball days.
Sure. You know, t-ball, I was the last batter. So if you don't know much about that, you know,
Right.
I hit the home runs, and then that was the peak of my baseball career. But
Well, it sounds like we have a lot more in common than the fact that we both, you know, outkicked our coverage with beautiful wives, and we owned small businesses here in Ponchatoula. We had similar athletic prowess on the baseball diamond. That's funny, but it doesn't stop you from being a fan. You know, before the show, Sham and I were, you know, taking a little tour of the office here, and he checked out my Yankee Stadium seats, and we got to talking, and I learned that we both share a passion for Mississippi State baseball. So that's cool. You don't have to play well to love a team and follow it and root for them. So I'll say to you, for your home state, Mississippi State baseball team, you know, the national champions, congrats. You guys are riding high right now.
Yeah, go Dogs. Yeah.
Well, tell me about
anything's always good.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, tell me about what school was like in a small town like that. Is it, you know, one? I mean, I would imagine you don't have multiple competing school systems and districts, but maybe you did. Tell me what it was like.
Definitely not. You know, growing up in a small town, you know, they have. I don't know if you could, if you know, like Springfield had its own little school, and like Beatico had its own little school, and you know, if Robert had his own little school. So it was like spread out throughout the county or parish, you know.
Like feeder schools?
But basically, you know, so I lived in town, so I went to all the schools in town.
Gotcha.
You know, I can still picture my elementary school teacher, Miss Poe. And, you know, it's funny because my brother, who's like 2 years younger than me, had the same teacher, you know.
Miss Poe?
Correct. And
tell us about her. What was Miss Poe like?
You know, just a gentle, sweet person. But you didn't play around in her class either. You know. So if she caught you slipping, she'd definitely let you know. But,
kept you honest.
Just a very loving person. And I remember a time back in middle school where we were going to go back and, you know, visit the kindergarten teacher, and lo, she was still there. You know, so I got to read a book in her class.
That's cool.
You know. I'm sure she
isn't it amazing when you go back, you see things, and you're so, you know, you're so reassured, and it just warms your heart to see some things the same, like the same teacher there, same classroom. But then things can seem so different too, right? Like, for example, I was helping feed the PHS football team last week, and for the first time in 20 years, I stepped into the cafeteria, and that place seemed like a cavern. I mean, or Coliseum rather. It just seemed giant. When I was a kid, and now it just seems like like it's just a cafeteria room. It's not that big. Yeah. Did you find it like that when you went back and saw Miss Poe all those years later?
For sure. You know, actually, in such a small community or such a small town, when I went with the kindergarten classroom it was actually little. I don't want to say it was just its own individual like little classrooms, kind of like little makeshift trailers, kind of set up. That each teacher had. And then when I went back, they had a whole brand new, very nice facility, kindergarten wing. Actually, my brother got to go there a couple of years later. So
that's encouraging.
That, you know?
That's encouraging, and I hope my good friend Mark Verbois, who's the guest host of the show when I'm unavailable, is watching, because when I was there visiting the football team and in the cafeteria, I went to say hello to him. He recently started teaching at PHS, and he's in a little temporary makeshift trailer-like building behind the cafeteria. Right. So it might you know pick his spirits up to know that maybe one day they'll build something big and nice and new like they did in your hometown.
He's on the up and up for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, you clearly show an appreciation all these years later for your teachers, and seem to really cherish that small town upbringing. What was the next chapter in your life? Where'd you go next? What was it like?
Yeah, so in between high school, I actually moved up to North Mississippi, a town called Greenwood, and I lived with my grandparents there. And you know, that was really nice because I actually got to live with my grandfather like the last 3 or 4 years of
that's
his
cool.
life, you know, which was great. And
what was he like? What was your grandfather like as a man?
So that was my dad's dad, and he was
Okay.
actually born in India. That's where my
Oh,
last name
cool. Wow.
Singh comes from. Yeah, it's Indian name.
Yeah.
And my
So
grandfather.
how old was he when he moved over? Because last week we interviewed Casey Perrin Robert.
Okay.
Her mother-in-law, Miss Juliana Chan, has China Lotus Restaurant in Hammond, and we talked
Yeah.
about the courage that it takes to travel all the way around the world to come over
Sure.
here and make your way. You know, start a family. In her case, open
Yeah.
a business. Tell us about your grandfather's, you know, origin story and how he made it all the way around the world from India to Mississippi.
Yeah, we could be here a long time talking about that, but I'm very proud. I am very proud of it.
I'm sure, of course.
You know, my grandfather grew up in a small community, a very rural farming community in India, northern India, called Punjab, and I recently found out that his dad was kind of like the tax collector for the British at the time. So maybe that provided him some other opportunities. He actually got a job working for British Steel in his 40s. Okay, but he had most of his children at that time. He had 6 children.
Wow.
So 5 of them were already born in India in that community, and my dad included. And so he got that job for working in British Steel. They moved to England when my dad was a small child. And
what part of England?
I'm actually really not sure on the origins of exactly where in England, but
that's understandable. You weren't around yet.
Yeah, sure. But I do know that that's where he was working for British Steel, and my dad learned how to read and write English at like 8. Went to a British high school, and then they started migrating to the States in the early 70s. Yeah.
Okay. So what was it like growing up, as an Indian family in a place that I assume, like Ponchatoula, did not have a large Indian community? I mean, I've been here for 44 years, with the exception of a few years spent, in school and working in the, court systems. And I've been blessed to have 2 really good buddies that are Indian American, Ravi Sanjasetti, Ramesh Reddy. But I had to find those guys down in the city, right? So in rural Louisiana and presumably rural Mississippi, it's an outlier, right? So what was that experience like? And I mean, I'm sure your family was really strengthened by that whole, experience. Is that the case?
Definitely. My dad and his uncles growing up in England, when they came to the States, they were very Americanized. They're very much into British and American culture at the time. Actually, a lot of them married Americans. My mom's from Mandeville, so So and they met in Jackson, and so growing up, as an Indian, like I say, half Indian kid in Mississippi, it was really no different for me, other than my name, Sham.
Yeah, sure,
Singh, I really grew up just a southern kid, really.
Yeah, right.
No different, yeah. But going back to my grandfather, he was Sikh by his religion, so he wore a turban and stuff like that. And that was about the only thing. I do remember him picking me up from school a couple of times, and he had his big turban on, and my friends were like, "What's your grandfather wearing on his head?" But other than that, it was just really no different because my family became so Americanized,
Yeah, sure. Of course, with your mom being from Mandeville,
sure.
But what a blessing to spend 3 years. I think you said it was 3 years, with him at the end. That had to be really neat. Tell us about, other people in your family. What's your mom like? What's your dad like? You mentioned, brother. What's your family like?
Yeah, a great family. My mom, she lives in South Florida now. My dad's still in Mississippi. I'm really close to my uncles. I'm very close.
That's
with
cool.
Them, and my grandmother's still living. She's 93. I think she'll be 93 this month, actually.
That is so cool. Wow, good for her. You guys need to throw her a big bash. My grandmother didn't make it there, but her sister, Myra Vaughn, the mother of my godfather, Jack Parker Vaughn. We were talking Mississippi State baseball earlier. He was a shortstop there, and we talked about that off the record some. She made it to 105, I think.
Wow.
So what a blessing to have those matriarch types that can go a long distance. And speaking of that, there's a Ponchatoula native who is originally a Wells. Okay, this is if you remember Sparky Wells, who was on our
Sure.
show a few months ago. His aunt. She's competing this Saturday, not tomorrow, but Saturday in the Louisiana Senior Games. She's a sprinter. She's going to run the 100-meter dash at 105 years old.
Wow.
And I think just by participating, she'll set world records. She's already set other records in the 50 and the 100. So thanks for mentioning your grandmother. I just want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to a super senior from Ponchatoula. So, folks, if you're watching live or before Saturday, I think the race is 11, 11:10, 11:15. If you get there by 11, I think you should be safe. You'll get to see Hurricane Hawkins, the legendary 105-year-old sprinter from Ponchatoula. Sorry, Sham, to hijack your interview there.
No, you heard
it's not often. We're talking, dynamic senior ladies. It's time to pay a few props. So circling back, your 93-year-old grandmother, she's still around. Clearly, you have a tight-knit family. Do you guys get together up in Mississippi occasionally? Family reunions?
Thanksgiving.
How do y'all stay in touch?
It's that time of year where Thanksgiving is our biggest time. Like as I mentioned before, my dad has 5 brothers, so we meet at the dinner table at Thanksgiving, and we have a great time. Cool. I look forward to that every year. It's a great thing, and we always go up to Greenwood for Thanksgiving. It's a blast.
Right. Yeah. Now, as a young husband with a 1-year-old, holidays can take on a new dynamic, and she's got her family. So, you guys head up there now. Where's your wife Kathleen from? How'd y'all meet? And where's her family now?
Yeah, so my wife Kathleen, she's from Jackson, Mississippi. So we're implanted here. We're Mississippi natives, but Louisiana raising. So
you've got to drive through her hometown on the way to go see your uncles and grandmother and dad. So
definitely.
That probably works out well. You get to cover all bases.
Yeah, definitely got to stop and visit, drop the dog off.
Of course.
It's a big thing, but it's good.
Let them kiss that baby and get all that, get grandparent time in. Well, tell us about the next chapter. We talk about, growing up in southern Mississippi, moving to northern Mississippi. What came next for you? What was the next chapter?
Yeah, so I spent a little time at community college, and then not long after that, I went to work. Ironically, I have family ties in Louisiana. Obviously, I have an uncle down in Houma.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's where San Giuseppe's from, who I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I worked for one of my first jobs out of law school was working for Judge Stanwood R. Duvall Jr. And he's from Houma, great man, wonderful, wonderful man. And that's how I met San Giuseppe. We worked together for the judge. But what was so neat, this guy, when I first met him, I went on a job interview, and he said, "Are you Eddie Larison's son?" That was a question I've gotten a lot in my life because my dad was a much bigger deal than I'll ever be. So I was just sure this judge was asking, "Are you Sheriff Larison's son?" Maybe they had a court case together or something, whatever. That wasn't it. His father, Judge Duvall's father, like my grandmother, my dad's mom, were insurance agency owners like you. Wow. And they used to do the convention in southern Mississippi, I think in Biloxi on the coast. Okay. Yeah. And as little kids, like 10-year-old boys, future Judge Duvall and future Sheriff Larisson met, liked each other, played a little bit, and never to see each other again until I went to work for the judge, some 50 years later. So it just seems like a fun little story to tell because of, where you've got that connection in Houma. You're an insurance agent. That's really neat. So tell us about the Houma connection. And I guess that's your first, introduction to Louisiana in addition to your mom being from Mandeville.
Yeah, it was. And I actually was working for an offshore supply company at the time. And then, I did that for a little while. And then I moved back to Greenwood and I was working for a good close friend of mine's. His grandfather's mechanical construction business. Not long after that.
What did you do for those guys? What kind of work were you doing?
I was actually a welder's helper at that time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
folks, this is a guy who's gotten his fingernails dirty before. He wasn't born with a silver spoon, who just handed him an insurance agency at 18 and said, go for it. You were doing real men's work there.
Sure. And I definitely appreciate that time, with a hard hat and a hammer, good things come with that.
Oh, cool.
And then during that time period, I had a bad four-wheeler accident, an ATV accident.
Sorry to hear that.
And it made me who I am today. but I appreciate you saying that. But at that time, I had to really do some deep dive thinking about what my next chapter would be. And,
yeah. Well, how old are you at that time in your life?
At that time,
what age?
I'm around 20 at that time.
Okay, so very young man, just getting
Yeah,
started out there in
sure.
the world. Okay.
For sure, 2021.
Wow.
Yep. And,
so you mentioned you had to do some hard thinking. You
Yep.
know, you're pondering what's the next move.
Sure.
What direction did you take and why?
So that's how I was introduced to insurance. My uncle, who was down in Houma, was a new Allstate agent at the time, and he mentioned, because he set me up with that job working offshore, that he's like, hey, you know, you're gonna have to study for and pass the insurance exam, but I'll give you a job. You can come work for me. And I thought about it, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know what insurance is like. I don't know what the field is, but I started studying for the exam. And, you know, through, you know, that I passed the exam, and I moved down to Houma. So from Mississippi, pretty much my whole life, to Houma, Louisiana, where I started my insurance career.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what a great opportunity to start with Allstate. I mean, a giant multi-billion-dollar industry-leading company.
Sure.
And not only to have the benefit of all those corporate resources to teach you what insurance is all about, but to have someone who loves and cares about you right there to mentor you, and your uncle. What was it like working with your uncle for such a large corporation?
Yeah. Well, I left a little bit out. I also worked for an uncle up in Greenwood who he has a bunch of pizza franchises, Pizza Inn. There actually used to be one in Hammond.
Oh, trust me. Anybody who's been around here remembers Pizza Inn. That was legendary,
definitely.
man.
Yeah. I shouldn't have left that out. I feel bad.
But no, you should have led with Pizza Inn, man.
Pizza Inn.
I'll tell you what. The only thing that would be a better lead in than Pizza Inn would be Mr. B's Pizza, because Mr. Jim Barker, I'm sure you know all his family from Kiwanis.
Sure.
Those guys are serving the community with you there every week. Great family, great pizza. Had some of the best days of my life in there. But Pizza Inn too, man. Yeah, we're familiar with that. Tell us about working with your other uncle at Pizza Inn.
Yeah, so that was actually kind of like my first job. You know, I call it medium food, because it's not necessarily fast, but not slow. You know.
Sure,
But that was good. I learned a lot of good values with that. You know.
I bet. Would you agree that you learned great customer and client care skills there? Because I started out my job, you know, in 9th grade at Hi-Ho, and I worked there for 4 years, serving hamburgers and barbecue sandwiches, and then went to work at Berrytown Produce. And those jobs, more than anything else I've done, taught me about how to deal with people, you know, beginning with respect for the customer and putting their interests first. And I carry those lessons into my law practice today. Would you agree with something similar for you and your insurance company?
100%. You know, anytime you're in a service position, whether it's food or bartending, what have you, restaurant industry, you're definitely connecting with people, you know, and then who doesn't love to enjoy a nice meal in the process?
Yeah.
So making that whole experience enjoyable, it's definitely brings value of customer service in.
Well, that's cool, man. So you did Pizza Inn. You learned all about client care, customer care, you know, taking care of people.
Right.
And then you come down to Houma. You get into insurance.
Yeah.
What are some lessons you learned in insurance working with your uncle down in Houma?
Well, okay, so the uncle that I worked for was on my dad's side with the Pizza Inn. The mom's side was insurance in Houma. You know, 2 great mentors in my life too. I don't want to leave them out. Bob and Brian. And I learned so much from them, really. You know, first lesson I learned in insurance in Houma would be, you know, obviously from being a Mississippi kid, going down to Houma was a complete culture shock, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I bet that you had some accent clash there, huh? Because the Houma accent and the Mississippi, very different stuff, right?
Yeah, everybody immediately knew when I got on the phone that I wasn't from Houma. Right? Those people are great. They're good as gold, and they were great to see.
Sure.
I love the time that I spent there. First lesson I learned, to get back to your question, there's a term of endearment in South Louisiana and here too, shat, right?
Right.
It's like deer.
I got a Cajun mama, so I hear you.
Shat. The secretary that worked in my uncle's office, she ran the front desk, and she called everybody shat. Well, me being fresh off the boat from Mississippi, coming down to Homa, and she's going around the office, Shad this, Shad that. Oh, Shad, let me show you this. Let me do this. And I said, let me stop you for 1 second. I said, my name is Sham. There's an M on the end.
No, you didn't.
It's not just Shad. And she looked at me like she saw a ghost. And
That's
she never
classic.
said anything. She just looked at me and then she shook her head and laughed. And I was
That's
like,
funny.
What is she laughing about? And I had to ask a coworker. I was like, well, this is what I said. And there's like, oh, you don't understand.
That's hilarious, man. That's a great story.
First lesson. Yeah.
That's funny, man. It's so good. Well, you mentioned, you say your uncles are Bob and Brian. Did I get those names right?
Right.
They're clearly big impacts in your life. You describe them
100%.
as mentors that have been so good to you and taught you so much. Tell us a little bit about each of them. What were they like?
So we'll start with my Uncle Bob first. Very successful businessman, came to the States in the early 70s, like my dad did. Started from nothing,
Right.
Came to the States, started working in a Sonic, kind of like you did with Hi-Ho, flipping burgers.
Oh, yeah.
And then worked his way up into the pizza franchise business with Pizza Inn. So, I mean, land of opportunity.
Just super hard worker.
Yeah,
I'm sure he had an eye for detail. Sonic, Pizza Inn, these franchises are known for their systems, for quality control. I assume those were, fortes, skills of his.
Sure. 100%. He will not miss anything. He could walk into this room right now and he can tell you that there's a light bulb out. Just
right.
Attention to detail is definitely key. And the way he conducts business is it was awesome to be
associated with him. Yeah, he sounds like just a really honorable guy, and clearly a great businessman. You don't get to own in multiple restaurants unless you are, but that's
and a long time Rotarian like yourself. So
good. Well, service above self. Rotary and Kiwanis, your club and mine, are kind of friendly rivals. We're all got the same goal in mind to help this community and especially help kids. That's neat. Well, tell us about your other uncle down in Homa. What was he like, and tell us about him.
Oh man, Brian, he's just a heart of gold, and he'll do anything in the world for you, as long as he can see that you're trying to, better your opportunities. And he taught me everything I know about insurance and sales, and just a great guy to be around. Such a lovable guy. He'll steal the room, when he walks in. And a lot of my customer service and interacting with people came from that as well.
Yeah. So tell us about that stage in your life. So you mentioned you get there, he's teaching you everything you know about insurance. Mm-hmm. You're, learning Louisiana culture share.
Right.
And, how do we get from there to here, to you owning your own business in Ponchatoula? Right. It's a new market, a new company. Sure. Tell us a little bit about the journey of how you got from one place to another.
Allstate was a great company, with my Uncle Brian being the agent there and kind of teaching me the ropes of insurance. I worked for him for 8 years before I decided that, maybe it's time to branch out and do something on my own, which he fully supported, and I started looking at, different things. Obviously, I was involved with Kiwanis down in Thibodaux, Homa area. Great people, and I love the relationships that I built there. I met my wife. We got, we were dating.
Was she in Homa also? Because you mentioned she's from Jackson.
How did you meet your wife? And she went to Ole Miss. She started going to nursing school when we met, and she took a job in New Orleans. So she was in New Orleans. I was in Homa. And I started thinking.
Did she know you were a Mississippi State Bulldog fan, or did you wait?
She didn't hold that against me. She didn't hold that against me. Thankfully, she didn't hold that against me.
Hotty toddy, man. That's good for her. She looked past that.
Yeah, bless her for that. And
you met her. She's in New Orleans nursing. Graduated from school. And you're in Homa working insurance. You said 8 years with your uncle.
Yep.
And you're thinking about doing something else. How'd you get to Ponchatoula? Why Ponchatoula? What was the connection?
So I started, bouncing around the map. I was obviously, I may have been engaged or I was planning to be engaged. And I was planning to propose to Kathleen. And,
Gotcha.
Obviously with that comes marriage and then children and where you want to raise your family. And I started looking at, obviously, Mississippi is my home, but Louisiana was where I wanted to be. And started looking around. I looked into Lafayette, maybe looked into around Baton Rouge, and then, I would always pass through, Ponchatoula and Hammond going back home, and made a couple stops in the area, and then I would look at the growth of Tangipahoa Parish, and I was like, maybe there's something about this.
You looked at that map and you saw those two interstates crossing right here, and probably.
Yeah. And I was, but to that point though, but there was something, it could have easily been Hammond, but Ponchatoula had something a little special going on. I could tell the small town, small town guy.
More your speed growing up where you did, like you did.
It hit home, so I was like, this is where I want to be for sure.
Cool. Very cool. Now, how did you get her on board with the decision? Because she's a big city girl. Except for Oxford, which is a beautiful little college town. She'd been in Jackson, New Orleans. Did it take much arm twisting and convincing to get her to come here?
Well, I think she liked that it was very close to New Orleans, but also that, it's not far from her hometown either.
Right.
My uncle, who lives in Homa, also grew up in Mandeville, and he was really close with Wesley Daniels with Branch Real Estate. So,
great friend of mine. Yeah, Wesley and I grew up together. You block apart.
Wesley's I call him a great friend of mine too now, obviously.
Yeah, no, Wesley's great. That's Wesley Daniels with Branch Real Estate, folks. If you have real estate needs, he's got a great team. One of his realtors, Sharon Carter's been on our show before. Two of them, excuse me. Logan Davis also works there. He's been on the show. Great team. So, Sham, please continue. Sorry to hijack that, but anytime folks come on and we got a chance to plug former guests, I love to give them some props.
Yeah, I love it too. I kind of feel like he's behind me right now since his office is just down the way, just across the road here.
You can see it out that window behind you if you look hard.
Yeah, exactly. So, so Brian was like, hey, if you like Ponchatoula Hammond, you need to call Wesley. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll call Wesley. Met Wesley, obviously, anybody that knows Wesley, great guy,
Yeah, easy to hit it off with, for sure.
Definitely. And then, if it didn't feel like home when you got here, he'll make you feel like it's home for sure.
Absolutely.
So he helped me look at a few places around here. And
you mentioned your family coming over from India. This is not nearly as far or ambitious as a trek, but Wesley's family and mine actually moved down here from Michigan well over 100 years together. So the families go way back, and they've been here, like you and me, small town business owners, pretty much ever since. But a great family.
Yeah. So that is awesome. That you come from all over, and Ponchatoula's home, right?
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, we talk about this frequently on the show because we've had a mix of old guard guests who've been here. Like we had, some folks who've been here, well over 70 years. As well as folks that just kind of new to town, just got here. And, we typically believe what makes Ponchatoula so special is the people, right? And part of that is this history, this culture that's been around forever that makes the Strawberry Festival what it is, and can tell you the origins of Old Hardhide, and, tell you where the best fishing spot is and all this stuff that you can't know if you came in 2018. But another part is, as much as we care about this small, tight-knit community of people like Wesley, who've been here for literally over a century, we're welcoming of new people, and we try to really kind of recruit the best. I think of Coach Hank Tierney and his lovely wife, Joanne. And, what better time to talk about them than right now, the district championship Ponchatoula high school football team. Football's never been better in Ponchatoula. You mentioned Friday Night Lights earlier, Sham, than under the Tierney era. But them and other folks like them, from the greater New Orleans area come up. And, when Katrina happens, this giant crew of Shalmatians move to town, and they kind of just carve out their own little niche. And it sounds like you and your wife and your family are doing something similar with a mixture of old connections like Wesley and the other folks at Kiwanis, as well as, a new thing here. Would you agree with all that? Has that kind of been your experience? And if so, tell us a little about it.
100%. Wesley and I keep in touch all the time. He's introduced me to some lovely people in the community, and with Kiwanis, as I mentioned
tell us
before.
about Kiwanis. We'd love to hear about. And first of all, we've talked about Kiwanis here on the show before. On my podcast, I've interviewed your incoming president, Danny Williams, and it's an organization that's dear to me. My brother Bree's a past president. I mentioned Danny, but not everybody knows about Kiwanis. It's a funky kind of word.
Right.
What's Kiwanis? What's your mission? Tell us about the organization, and then I'd love to hear about your involvement in it, because I know every time I attend a Kiwanis event, you're there at the beginning, you're there at the end, you're cleaning up the next morning after. You're one of the hardest working, best serving guys there. But before we get to that, let's talk about Kiwanis as an institution, as a service organization, and just give us a quick primer on what it is and what y'all do.
Well, that was very kind, Parker. I really appreciate that sentiment. And I don't do it for the recognition. Obviously, Kiwanis is a.
Well, I know you don't, because I see you there when I walk. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'll use this as an example for our viewers so that they know you're sincere. I walk in Kiwanis Park every morning when the weather allows, and there's nobody there except a few other people walking. And I will see you there picking up stinky trash. You're often not alone, Shelly's there. Sometimes Danny's there. I mean, some of your better workers, but yeah, there's no glory in that. There's no photo op in cleaning up the trash the day after the pancake breakfast, So yeah, please tell us more, but I just want our viewers to know that you're sincere, Sham, when you say that.
No, definitely. And, I was first introduced to Kiwanis down in the Home of Thibodeau area. And I mean, wow, the great things that you did. Obviously, it's a service organization, nonprofit, centered around children, helping children, whether it be children with disabilities or children in school, local schools around town. And then also, but not just, it is a international children's organization in a whole,
Gotcha.
But also just, community outreach in general as a nonprofit. But, with my introduction down in home in Thibodeau, one of the first things I did when I came to Ponchatoula was join the Kiwanis Club. I was like, this is a good way to meet people and get involved.
Did you need a sponsor to join? How'd that work, and who sponsored you?
Yeah, so Brian Staub was the
great guy.
Yeah.
We got to get Brian Staub on the show. He's retired now.
He's retired now. He's hard to get in touch with.
He's definitely hard to get in touch with during hunting season. He's probably up at his beautiful cabin in Mississippi, back in your home state.
Yeah,
but Brian is such a great guy, dear family friend of ours. Comes from a family of many legends. His dad, Mr. Godfrey, was just, a local legend in every sense of the word. But Brian's a great guy. There would be no Parker Layrisson law firm if not for Brian Staub and some other folks that he worked with, like Chad Richard, that formerly from, Florida Parish's Bank. Great guy. Gave me a loan when I probably didn't deserve it. So when you bring up his name, I get a big smile on my face because there's no finer man in Ponchatoula. How'd you know Brian? What was the connection there?
So I was actually introduced to Brian through another friend of mine that lives here, the Venturas. They've been in this community a long time.
Oh, yeah. So you're talking about Butch and Byron and all that gang?
Butch and Byron,
yeah, great guys. I grew up with those rascals.
Yeah. So I was actually, when I bought my office on Pine Street through Wesley helped me out with that. And then Byron was doing had a construction company at the time.
Right.
And he was helping me remodel it and get everything up to date, kind of like what you've done here with this beautiful office. And
tell us about that building, because what a great opportunity. I mean, that is a prime location.
Yeah.
You're right there in the thick of things, right there in the middle of all the action. Did Wesley bring you that? You mentioned him helping you with it. How'd you score such a great location, such a great building?
Yeah, so I was actually looking just around places. There wasn't a lot to even lease at the time.
Right.
That building was just kind of sitting there. I don't think it was an old finance building, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
When you walked in, you're like, you don't know if you want to be a part of it, but
don't feel bad. It felt that way here too. We had to gut the whole place. Yeah. But what's the old saying in real estate? Location.
Yeah,
and you nailed it there.
Yeah. So I'm very proud of that office now. You know, if you come in and see it, it doesn't look like anything like it did before with the wood paneling walls
That's great.
and blue commercial
So,
carpet.
so Byron, the Venturas, through their
Yes.
construction company, helped
Yes.
you renovate that.
Yep. And
Those are great guys. Now,
so I guess
ahead,
Brian was coming to get his lunch, and he pulled into Burger King, and Byron goes, "Hey, Brian, come here. I need you to meet somebody." And that's how I met Brian Stive. Yeah.
Very cool. Now I'm noticing something here, and I'm just going to jump out on a limb here, knowing you're a good old boy from Mississippi.
Yeah.
But everybody you've talked about so far seems to have a premium hunting lease. We're talking Wesley Daniels, the Venturas, Brian Staub. We haven't mentioned anybody yet that didn't own prime Mississippi hunting property. You must be somebody who knows his way around the woods and the waters, hunting, fishing. Let's talk about it. Are you into it? Tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. Grew up hunting and fishing. Pond bass fishing and stuff like that in Mississippi, but I really loved and learned how to fish, inshore and offshore when I lived down in Houma.
Sure.
I still love it to this day. Obviously with a 1-year-old, you don't spend as much time in the woods or on the water as you would like to, but still something I'm very passionate about, and I love the outdoors for sure.
Very cool. Well, I have not been trout fishing in a while. It's my absolute favorite thing to do down there, whether it's out of Houma, Dulac, Venice, wherever. Louisiana's just stocked with great places to fish. Yeah. But I can tell you what, with the little ones, it's just as fun to go to a local creek or pond and go, perch jerking and maybe catch one little sun perch or something. Yeah. But if you can get that little kid to catch one and see their reaction to it, it's in a way, in that stage in your life, it's better than catching your limit any day out there in the salt water. So with a 1-year-old, yeah, you're about to get into that. Let's talk about that stage in your life. You mentioned your beautiful wife, how y'all met, how y'all, you mentioned getting engaged, coming here. Let's fill out the love story a little bit. Tell us a little bit more specifically about how y'all met.
Sure.
When you made the move to propose, and now we know, how we got to the middle of this story, love, marriage, first child, but tell us a little bit more so that we can get to where we are today with this beautiful 1-year-old boy you've got.
Yeah. So my wife Kathleen's from Jackson, as you say, as we mentioned before. We met at my first cousin's wedding in Greenwood, Mississippi. My first cousin's now wife and Kathleen went to college together at Ole Miss, and we were both serving in the wedding. I was a bridesmaid, and
Now, was this the classic setup where they had y'all walk together so that y'all would fall in love, or were y'all?
We walked separately, but she would hate me for telling you this, but like I always say, love was in the air, I guess. But.
I love it.
Her reaction to this right now, she's probably cringing. But yeah,
it's not a good interview on Ponchatoula Live unless I'm in trouble with my wife when I get home and I get you guys to go down with me. Okay,
I say it on purpose now. Love is in the air, and we had met at an engagement party before, and then but we didn't keep in touch, and then when the wedding came, we danced and had a great time, and then. We started dating not long after that.
Well, now, do you guys agree on the kind of origin story here? Because my wife and I have a very different recollection. We agree we met at the Strawberry Festival. We don't exactly see eye to eye about who asked whom out and how the rest of it went. Are you guys on the same page? I mean, what was the move that brought y'all together after this wedding?
I'm pretty sure we're on the same page. She was still in nursing school in Jackson at the time, and I was down in Houma and Thibodaux, and so it was long distance for a little while, and we went to another wedding of a good friend of mine in Baton Rouge, and it just so happened to be the day before Valentine's Day.
Oh wow!
Can't recall the year, so
that can get you in a lot of trouble as a young bachelor.
Well, so what happens is the next day. We go have brunch or lunch or whatever, and everybody's sitting there with their significant others, and there's roses on the table and everything like that. And I'm like, so I guess we're a boyfriend and girlfriend now, She's like, if that's how you're asking me, I said, yes. I
love it. That's great.
Love was in the air again.
Yeah. So cool, man. Well, so tell us about, the transition from that to
Mhm.
married, and now you have a child. I think you mentioned to me before the show that your son just turned 1 year old about 2 weeks ago. Is that right?
Yep.
Tell
Henry
us
is,
about Henry and what it's been like to be a new dad, because so many of us have either been through that. I'm
yeah.
only 3 years removed or 5 from my first child, or maybe aspire to do that one day, or maybe curious what's it like being a young dad who also owns a new business. I mean, you're kind of raising two babies at once, right? Southern Oaks Insurance Company and then Henry. Tell
Yeah.
me what that's been like.
You know, I think I really learned what life's about when Henry came into the world. A
Hmm.
buddy of mine told me that. He said, "You don't know what life's like until you have a child." And I said, "No, I don't. I think you're wrong," but he was absolutely right. A good friend of mine, Lyle Graham, he's down in Houma too, and I was like, "Man, you're so right." And yeah, he's the joy of my day. In the mornings, and then when I get home in the evening, yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's awesome. Um,
Isn't that the
like,
best when you get
yeah,
home, you got a 1 year old, and at that point, their
yeah,
eyes will light up when they see daddy walking. They're so
yeah,
glad to
smile.
see you when you get home. And unfortunately, that doesn't last with parenting.
Yeah,
So enjoy every evening of it.
I will.
But isn't that just the best stuff in the world?
It is, and to answer what life's like, it's so fast paced, man. Everybody's in the hustle and flow of their day to day life, and when you have a young child, it's just that much more, busy. And I would think, when you bring them home from the hospital and they're just this little thing, and then now he's one, and it's just like everybody says, don't blink. It's true, it just goes by.
Amen.
It goes
Amen.
by so fast.
Yeah, no, I was, as I mentioned to you when you arrived here, battling my kindergartner over homework an hour ago here in my office. And it seems like last week he was just a little baby. And, I've
Yeah,
seen with 13 or so nieces and nephews that they go off and become teachers and police officers and construction workers, faster than you can, shake a stick at. So it's
yeah,
quite amazing. Is it different when when you're married to a medical professional, like when you have a wife as a nurse?
for
Are
sure.
you less nervous that you're going to kill the kid that first week? I mean, I remember the terror, the slowest 8 miles or whatever, and not even that, 5 miles or less from North Oaks Hospital to my house. I can
Right.
remember driving 8 miles an hour because I was terrified.
Yeah.
What's that like when you've got a nurse in the car with you? Do you kind of feel like it's all covered, or are your knees knocking like the rest of us?
Well, I guess I just felt like I was, in protective dad mode at the time. It was like I got my kid, I got my family's in the car.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
seatbelts on, 10 and 2. We're going real
Hmm.
slow, but yeah, definitely there's a lot of reassurance with a medical professional in the household.
That's great.
And he gets all the medical attention in the world, but if I have a runny nose, there's nothing wrong with me.
Oh yeah. Never, ladies, never underestimate the pain that a man goes through when he gets a common cold. It's real. The struggle is real, folks.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of professions, let's turn our attention to yours, because I hear so many great things about you and your company and the services that you provide to our Ponchatoula community through Southern Oaks Insurance. So tell us about your company, what y'all do, the services you provide, and maybe the why you do it. I mean, you mentioned kind of how you got started and where
Right.
insurance with your uncle and Homo through Allstate. But just tell us, you clearly have a passion for this profession of yours and a
Definitely.
gift for helping people, get to the right place they need, protection wise, coverage wise. Tell us a bit about that, please.
Yeah, so Southern Oaks Insurance, even from the name, I was trying to think of what I wanted to name my insurance company, because that was always the goal to own my own
Hmm.
agency. And how iconic it is to see a southern live oak tree here in Louisiana. There's some type of protection, there. There's deep roots involved, and there's a lot of things that even the name of Southern Oaks Insurance really just kind of ties it all in. So Southern Oaks Insurance is an independent property and casualty insurance agency. We do home, auto, life, and small business insurance.
Hmm.
Um, the motto of my business is superior service and affordable protection, and that goes back to my Allstate days, where customer service is key throughout a
Right.
big company like Allstate and State Farm and Farm Bureau. So I wanted to take that same mentality of excellent customer service, but then having an option for everybody, because, as an independent agent, you do have tools and resources to be able to find a policy that fits everybody's needs, where some of those.
Right. So it's my understanding, and please correct me or educate me here, that when you're an independent agency, as you are, you can work with multiple companies, right?
Correct.
So, for example, my business here, we use an independent agent, Sparky Wells, who I grew up with. He's great, but he can shop Hanover versus Progressive versus.
Sure.
Is that the way you guys are set up? Tell us about how that works for folks that maybe have always been with State Farm or Allstate or some other place that works differently.
Sure, you're exactly right. And so we have multiple companies that we're contracted with, not just exclusive to one company, where we can.
So you can kind of go bird dog the best deal for your client, your customer, yes, by comparing rates and benefits and protection, right?
Absolutely. And then backing up with that level of customer service that the big brands do provide too.
Yeah.
You're not just a number. You're not a number.
Yeah.
In our office, you really are part of the community.
Well, I think anybody who spent any time with you or watched this interview, 50 minutes into it, sees how personable you are and how you really care. And I'm sure you bring that level of attention and just affable, amiable, easy to get along with way to every customer. Tell us about what you like about the job. I'm sure there are parts of your day you just love, others you can leave behind, but let's focus on the positive. What do you love about being an insurance agent, an agency owner, and running Southern Oaks Insurance?
So things that I love is interacting with different people in the community, protecting their assets. People work hard every day for the things that they have. And, insurance is such an intangible thing. You don't take it home with you. You don't stuff it in a backpack. You don't put it in a shopping bag. You're paying for the promise of, if something happens, that you'll be indemnified or go back to where you were before. And, I love giving people that reassurance that, hey, if you need something, that we're going to be here for you. And maybe putting somebody where they have a new child and budget's tight, and maybe they need to save some money on their premiums. I love being able to shop their policies and making sure they have good coverage, but also savings, and then also just interacting with people. And and here in Ponchatoula, we're definitely recovering from the impacts of Hurricane Ida. Right now, the most joy of my job comes from making sure that people's claims are paid and people they can get back their homes.
So you're able to help them communicate with the claims teams and get what they need so that they can get paid. That's neat.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about this. Clearly you love your job. Sounds like you're in this for the long haul. You've got roots here in Ponchatoula now. My guess is now that your wife's used to this good Ponchatoula life, you couldn't talk her into moving if you tried. But if you did not have to make money, if your kid was just college is paid for in year one, all the money issues of the world are set aside, no notes, no mortgages, etc. What do you think you'd do? If you just didn't have to worry about the money, would you? What do you think about that?
It's something I've never thought about. Obviously, I come from a very driven family.
Very ambitious.
I would probably still sell insurance at some point.
That's when we know you've got the love for it. That's the right answer. If I, that's what I want to hear on my agent. That's cool, man. Well, look, I promised you I'd get you out of here on time, and the hour's almost up.
Yeah.
So before we go, let me ask you this. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers, with our listeners? Anything else on your mind, on your heart? Just anything you want to say at all?
In my short three going on 4 years here, I would like to thank the community for if you have business with me, or if not, or if I've interacted with you in any kind of way, or if my business has, thank you. I appreciate it. And when we have community events like the Strawberry Festival, come out and support those things that are going on in our community, where Kiwanis will have a presence there, and Parker, you're with Rotary, you'll have a presence there, and the other great nonprofits, and come and eat and enjoy in Ponchatoula and all that it has to offer. And I love being a part of it.
Great advice. That's a great point. And you've been a great addition to this community. You know, you fit here perfectly. You know, it's like it just seems like a story that was meant to be, right? So I'm so glad that you and Kathleen chose Ponchatoula. You could live clearly, like you said, you're driven. Your family's already crossed the whole world to get here, right?
Sure.
You could live anywhere in the world, but you chose Ponchatoula. And I just think that's so cool. So, Sham Singh, thank you for coming here on the Ponchatoula Live Show. To our viewers, we will be back here next week, same time, same place. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. And once again, reminder, check out the Louisiana Senior Games this weekend. I might have the time wrong. I might have the day wrong, but I'm pretty sure around 11 o'clock on Saturday, right up the road at Southeastern, we're going to see a Ponchatoula native at 105 years old set a world record. And you don't get to do that every day. So please check it out. And thank you all for tuning in. Take care.